Hey, Kerry.
Take you far, far away. I'll make you feel alright. You gotta crave it and say until you're close enough to taste it. I can give you what you need. Yeah. The crime. Alright, now I feel alright. I feel like I need to write down the rhyme tonight. I feel like K-Dub. Yeah, I feel like me.
Hey, Kev. Is that a little intro from K-Dub tonight?
Yeah, we finally got permission from the artist to use some music.
There you go.
After a long negotiation.
So while you're out there following Storytellers New Haven, go ahead and follow our artist as well, K-Dub. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the January 2021 edition of Storytellers New Haven. I'm Karen Du Bois Walton, here with Kevin Walton, co-founder of Storytellers New Haven. It's 2021.
Yes.
Happy New Year. We are excited to be kicking off 2021 back in this space. Storytellers New Haven is a space created really to build community. And we believe that we build a strong community through storytelling, through getting to know each other and hearing each other's stories. Through story, we find commonality. We begin to see past initial perceptions, prejudices, stereotypes, and connect to each other's humanity. And that is, I think, so needed at this moment in time in our nation, in our country. The things we've seen over this past couple of weeks has been quite something.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'm really glad that we had this opportunity to be together, and we just need to take a break, because what we witnessed the last couple of weeks, but especially last Wednesday, is just forever etched in the mind, and and it's just weighing on people, me personally, us, and just people in general. And, so I think now is a great time for us to hear some stories from our fabulous storytellers tonight.
Oh, absolutely. I so agree. We could not do Storytellers without the generous support of our partners and friends. I always like to thank Bill Graustein, whose incredible support has allowed us to do this. It's really through Bill and his community leadership program that Kevin and I started exploring the use of story in different ways. Story as a leadership tool, story as a community building tool. And so we are certainly grateful for those experiences and for the ongoing support that Bill provides for us. We typically, if we were not under COVID pandemic conditions, would be meeting in the Orchid Cafe of Concat. And we want to thank our friend Eric Clemens, the CEO at Concat, for his support. And although we're not able to do Storytellers there, the Orchid Cafe is open, and we encourage you to go and support them for breakfast or lunch. The food and meal that you'll receive is prepared by the culinary arts students of Concat. So please support them. Our ability to come to you virtually is supported by our partnership with Rev Kev, Kevin Ewing, and Baobab Tree Studios. And we thank him for his professional support and all the work that it takes to get us here, zooming into your world monthly. So thank you to all for that. Kev, is there anything else we need to say before we jump into our stories?
Yeah, I think we're StreamYarding into their worlds.
Yes, absolutely. Our tech is StreamYard. And thank you, because that reminds me that you are watching us on our YouTube channel. And we thank you. Our viewership, our following is growing on our YouTube channel. Go there. You can see and revisit tonight's stories at any time, but you can also get a chance to see the stories through our 3 years of Storytellers New Haven. And I love to go back and visit those. So please make sure to visit us on our YouTube channel, like and follow us on Facebook as well, and join our virtual community of storytelling. So we have two wonderful tellers that I am excited. They are new to the Storytellers New Haven chair, but not new to finding ways of telling their story and sharing their story. And so I'm excited to hear that. They've also been in our audience when we were able to be at the Orchid Cafe. So I think we're ready to bring our first teller up. Right, Kev?
Yes, I think we're ready to go.
All right, great. So we are going to begin tonight. You are in for a real treat as we hear from Jamilah R. George, who comes to New Haven through Detroit, Michigan, where she is born and raised and received her undergrad degree at University of Michigan, came to New Haven via Yale University, where she received her master's degree, and she is now working on a PhD in clinical psych at UConn. Jamilah is a therapist in a phase 3 clinical drug trial and is exploring MDMA-assisted psychotherapy for treatment-resistant post-traumatic stress among people of color. Her passion for social justice and health equity fuels her work as she advocates for mental and holistic well-being of socially disenfranchised groups, including women, people of color, impoverished domestic and international communities, and the intersections therein. She is also an accomplished thespian and actress, and I think you're going to enjoy meeting and hearing from Jamilah. Welcome, Jamilah.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here with you both.
Absolutely. We're excited to have you. So we are going to let you take it away. Our format is as it always is. Our teller will tell for about 15 minutes a story of something that's on her heart. We look forward to hearing that. If you have questions while she's telling, drop them in the YouTube chat so that we can pose them to her when she's finished. We love to have that interaction. So we'll sit back and listen. Take it away, Jamilah.
Great, thank you. So good evening, everyone. I'm so excited to be here and really honored to have this space to share parts of my journey with you. When I was first approached by Karen to participate in this event, I felt a little overwhelmed because I feel like there's so much I can say in 15 minutes. And so what I've decided to speak to you about tonight is really kind of reflecting on lessons from an African-centered contextual upbringing. And that includes kind of my spiritual upbringing, my educational upbringing, my kind of communal context, my sense of family and friends and that extended family and community. And so yeah, that's what I'm going to share. So as my bio mentioned, I am from Detroit. I was raised by a single dominant, like amazing woman named Kimberly Cole. I hope she's watching. Mommy, I love you. Hey, girl. She really, really kind of set the stage for a lot of what I'm getting ready to share. I'm really grateful to my mother for taking the liberty to put my brother and I in really African-centered programming. And so we both have roots, deep roots, really starting off with the African Methodist Episcopal Church. We were raised in St. Stephen AME in Detroit, Michigan. And for those of you who may not be familiar, the African Methodist Church was formed after Black people were literally pulled off of their knees while praying by the officials of this church, St. George's Methodist Episcopal Church. And so this movement was really led by Richard Allen, who decided to form an African congregation and eventually went on to form a new Wesleyan denomination that is African Methodist Episcopal Church. So kind of having that upbringing from a young age, I wasn't afraid to wear African garments. It wasn't strange to see, African American people in African garments in church. It was really encouraged. We learned a history really of resisting oppression, resisting discrimination, right, against Black people. So at a really young age, I had this strong sense of Black power and Black strength and Black resilience. And so I'm so grateful for kind of that context, really, that kind of set the stage for the rest of my life, really. And so kind of from there, I could probably write a book about all of these experiences. So I'm gleaning over like 20 years of history, mind you. But so the African Methodism piece was one part that was really important for kind of how I conceive of myself. And in fact, you might notice, well, first of all, you might notice my Christmas tree behind me because it continues to bring me joy. So I still have it up. But you notice the African art these Black women on my wall, these Black women wearing African garb and head wraps and carrying baskets and water and, right, obviously tending to their village. So that kind of symbolism is really important to me because it reminds me that I'm not alone, right? When in times when I feel, when I felt isolated and kind of lost even, I kind of just turned to art. And I have other pieces around my living room as well. My favorite piece is this African woman with these beautiful African features, and she has this big, beautiful curly hair, and there are flowers and green leaves growing out of her hair, which for me really symbolize, life and revitalization and growth. And so I learned to value the curls in my hair, right? And I've learned to value, the different cultural traditions of wrapping my hair up. Like Black women, we wrap our hair up at night to go to sleep, right? So there are these parts of my culture that I think outside of this kind of African cultured context could be lost and kind of confusing, right? Especially because as African Americans, we were forced to this country, right? And we were stripped of that history and that culture and that language. And so anything that we can do to kind of hold on to that legacy is really important for me and continues to be. So the African Methodist Church was just one part of that. I also reflect on my training in African dance. Again, I could write a book about what I learned from African dance and drumming, but just a couple of things. I attended an African-centered school called Marcus Garvey Academy, and I'll talk more about Garveyite-ism in a minute. But I was trained in African dance. I learned the value of dance and drumming. In that context, some of the gender roles were really deconstructed. This idea that women dance and men drum. No, women could drum too, and men could dance too, right? We could be interchangeable in that way. And there was a value of drum circles and drum communities, right? Standing together in a circle, right? Depicting unity, depicting community, right? And creating rhythmic motions and notions together with our hands and with our bodies. Just a really powerful way of kind of thinking about my body and how to engage my body with other people and with the earth, right? In African dance, I learned to pay homage to my ancestors, for example. There are, certain types of movements that we would do where you lift your hands up toward the sky, and you're honoring the sky and nature and the birds and the wind and the trees and everything that's up above, right? And then some of the movements that cause you to go down, right? And everything is downward and everything is low, right? Your knees are bent because there's honor and kind of paying homage to Mother Earth and digging deep into the soil, right? So again, learning the importance of kind of these elements was continually important for me. These kind of concepts from dance, I think, really influence the way in which I move my body through this earth and through this world. And particularly as a Black woman who I've never been, particularly skinny. And I've trained in many other genres of dance as well. I trained at the Detroit Windsor Dance Academy and ballet, jazz, tap, modern, you name it, I've done it. And in other forms of dance, I have very vivid memories of feeling like I wasn't small enough. I wasn't slender enough. In ballet in particular, there was expected maybe a gap in between your thighs, right? Or that you're kind of like your butt is in perfect alignment with your back. And these kinds of things that aren't particularly conducive to a curvy body, right? That many Black women have, or many women of color have. So for me, as a young girl, kind of having these memories that I wouldn't ever be able to be a point ballerina because I wasn't petite enough was really hurtful and really traumatic. And by the way, I ended up dancing on point, despite what some of my teachers had told me in the past, but that's another story. So anyway, in African dance, I felt embraced. I felt welcomed. I felt like it was a space for me. I felt like the way in which my body moved wasn't perceivably strange, right? That there were other women whose bodies looked like mine, and that it was okay that we were more curvy, that we had more shape, that we had a little more movement happening, right? And so that was really, really, really meaningful for me as a young dancer. and continues to be meaningful for me in my adulthood as a woman who continues to dance. And so I draw upon that African ancestry in dance and movement and motion and in body. And then I can't help but to think about the history of Kwanzaa in my family and in my community. So again, as a part of Marcus Garvey, in my own household, we would celebrate Kwanzaa. And Kwanzaa takes place between December 26th and January 1st, right? Every single day. There is a Kanara, and there are 7 different candles that represent the 7 principles of Blackness. And each day we light a candle, we recite the principle, we reflect on what it means. We would have a feast. Everybody would bring a dish, and different people would take turns hosting, and it would just be a beautiful fellowship. Of course, African garm, of course, drum and dance, of course, song, of course, call and response. This really beautiful, rich culture we were able to celebrate for 7 straight days. So Kwanzaa is really one of my favorite traditions, a Pan-African tradition that I think, in my experience, Black Americans tend to, not all of them, of course, but some of my friends, maybe my peers, I don't know if it's a generational thing, but my peers I found tend to downplay it because it was, created in America. But to me, that's part of the reason why we should embrace it, right? That because we don't have the privilege of having a direct connection to our African ancestry, many of us, some of us do, but many of us don't, right? So we have this beautiful tradition that was started in 1966, created by a man named Baba Karinga, who was active in the Black Power movement, the Congress of Racial Equality, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC, right, in the 60s and 70s. So this Black nationalism, Black pride, Black power, it grew out of that. And it borrows from the first fruit traditions, right, and borrows from Pan-African traditions. So for me, it has been, it continues to be a reminder of that beautiful history and that culture that in some ways has been lost, and connects me to that, but it situates it in an American context, which is really a particular setting, right? So kind of having that community, having that sense of joy and laughter and love from my friends and community and family. We really became a family over the years. They're brothers and sisters to me. We would call, the elders, Mama and Baba, kind of mother and father. And so having that sense of extended family and that sense of community tends to be important. When we think about African traditions, one of the first things that comes to mind for me is that village, right? It takes a village to raise a child. So there was that village. It was a sense of community and unity. And when we reflect on the 7 principles of Blackness, I mean, we memorized all of them by heart. As a student at Marcus Garvey, we learned the 7 principles of Blackness, or it's also called the Nguzo Saba, right? And there's 7 principles, and one is Umoja, unity. The second is Kuji Chakalia, self-determination. Ujima, collective work and responsibility. Ujima, cooperative economics. Nia, purpose. Kaumba, creativity, and Imani, faith. And each of those principles has a longer definition that we would remember and that we would recite every single day of the ceremony. And so as a student at Marcus Garvey, and particularly I was in elementary school, we would have all of these chants and all these poems and all of these things that we would recite, including the Nguzo Saba. And I remember on Fridays, we would come together for assemblies, and we would have drum and dance, and would give each of us an opportunity to perform and to be, kind of encouraged by our peers, and to have that sense of love and joy. I haven't really found anything like it since. But again, that sense of community in circle and in space with one another. I was also a part of the choir, so we would come and we would sing on Fridays as well. And we would we would just have such a good time. We would start off our day on Friday mornings that way. And sometimes even our teachers in class we would recite these different poems. And so kind of just being reminded of the beauty that is African ancestry and African culture, learning how to practice these traditions that may be kind of foreign to us otherwise. So, for example, I remember too, we would say, we call upon our ancestors far and near, name a few. And then what that means is that people will call on the names of their ancestors that had gone, their grandmothers and grandfathers and whomever they wanted to bring into the space. We would call out the name, and as a name was called, we would say Ashe and pour water into the plant again, for life and growth, right? And so just kind of having these kinds of rituals continue to be dear to my heart. I find myself practicing them on my own time, in my own space. As I'm here, I live alone in this PhD program, which is a very rigorous journey, and it is pretty self-isolating, and you can feel like you're in it by yourself. But I'm reminded, because of this art and this legacy and this history and this rich culture, because of my ancestors, I'm reminded that they are with me and that I'm not alone. I'm reminded of the Ubuntu philosophy that we would say, I am because we are. We are, therefore I am. Right? So I don't exist without you, and you can't exist without me. We must exist in community together. So another principle that really governs the way that I live my life every single day, even, X amount of years after leaving that program, I continue to think about, the principle, the 7 principles of Blackness. I think about, what it means to strive for and maintain unity in my family, in my communities, in my race. I think about, collective work and responsibility and cooperative economics, what it means to build and maintain our own shops, stores, and businesses and profit from them together, and the Black community, right? So that sense of Blackness is just really, really, truly a part of my life. Oh my gosh, I could say so much more. Let me try to wrap it up. So I wanted to share with you I think as a girl in the choir at Marcus Garvey, I got my first solo, actually, and the song was called Black Butterfly, and the notion is spread your wings. You can do anything. It was all of these kinds of messages that taught us to embrace and love who we are. And for me, as a girl who was teased for having a nose that was too big, I got teased all my life for having a big nose. In elementary school and middle school and high school. And in high school, I got teased for having big lips. There was always something. I always struggled with kind of how to love on myself. But when that happens, I draw on these messages. I draw on these concepts and these practices. And I'm reminded that I am loved, and that everything that makes me who I am, every part of my African ancestry is beautiful, right? That the curl of my hair is beautiful, and the width of my nose is beautiful, and the thickness and fullness of my lips is beautiful, and the swaying of my hips is beautiful. And that's difficult to grasp when you live in a world that kind of has these kind of Eurocentric standards of beauty. It makes you question who you are. So in closing, I want to share another poem that I learned as a student at Marcus Garvey. And I'm telling you, we recited everything. We memorized everything. There was no paper and pen. There was no computer screens and iPads. It was none of that. It was learn this poem, believe this poem, read it until you know it, and then recite it. And this poem continues to inspire me, and I want to share it with you. Unfortunately, I don't know the author. I've tried to find it. I think it's called Minute by Minute, but I'm going to recite it to you. And I just want to say before I read it before I recite it, that there is a line that says, Black people, we were once great, and we shall be great again. And that means the great, I think, is in reference to Black wealth, right? That before we were brought to this country, we were kings and queens, right? That we had all the wealth and all the power before we were forced into slavery. So that is what it means by the word great, because otherwise Black people are great, and we continue to be great. So minute by minute, I'm going to share. And then, and one more thing. At the end, we typically would say Harambe 7 times. You go Harambe, Harambe 7 times. And on the 7th time, Haram. You hold it forever. Be. And Harambe means all pull together. We all pull together. So keep that in mind. Just imagine hearing this call and response, standing in a circle in a community with people who love and honor you. And there's a leader who typically calls and the group would respond. But for the purposes of tonight, I'm just going to recite it straight through. Okay, so it goes like this. Minute by minute, hour by hour. If you lose your faith, you lose your power. Minute by minute, hour by hour. If you lose your history, you lose your power. Minute by minute, hour by hour. If truth is the light, then knowledge is power. If it is to be, then it's up to me. Because I feel good about myself, and I feel good about the people around me. I feel goodness all around me, and it shall follow me for the rest of my life. Because I walk with good, and I talk with good, and I am good, and that feels real good. Good, better, best, never let it rest until your good is your better and your better is your best. Black people, we were once great, and we shall be great again. Lose not faith, lose not courage. Go forward, uplift the race. Harambe. Thank you.
Harambe, Harambe. Oh my goodness. Thank you, Jamilah. That was so beautiful. The joy I felt in watching you go back to childhood, right? And pull on all of those memories was just beautiful, really beautifully told. And I got to tell you, the chat was abuzz with people just saying what a beautiful telling this was, and how you brought it to life, and how beautiful you are. So thank you so much. But before we get into our questions, I just have to say, Kev, see, I'm not the only one slow to take the Christmas tree down.
Yeah.
I'm connecting that all to.
Now I feel bad that you took it down yesterday.
I could have one more day.
One
Definitely.
more day.
Definitely.
Thank you for that, Jamilah. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I want to connect with the power of the oral tradition, though, and how you spoke about the fact that the stuff that you learned was through memorization, and it wasn't writing it down or pulling up the iPad at the time. And that's part of the power of how you're able to call it up in this moment, though, right? However many years later, I'm just so moved by that. And I don't know if there's anything more to say about that, but that felt like a big piece of how it became a part of you and internalized.
Yes, absolutely. The oral tradition is so profound in our culture. So yeah, you're absolutely right. That call and response, that hearing that voice and responding, it really kind of is ingrained in your heart after you do it. And when you really believe it too, it stays with you.
Yeah. So knowing that you're at UConn in stores, not necessarily the most Afrocentric of settings, how are you keeping? Tell us more about how you're keeping all this alive for you and how you're drawing on it. I see, certainly your home is part of that. But what else are you doing to keep your connection and to find your joy that way?
Yeah, I really imagine my community, to be honest, that they're not physically with me, but I imagine that they're here. I call upon them into this space. I'm a very spiritual person anyway, so I light candles, I light my sage. I walk through my house expelling negative energy. My partner got me a stone for Christmas, and so I kind of hold on to that, and just kind of all of these symbols that have been meaningful in my culture, in my family, in my tradition. I practice them, because it's kind of like anything else that you don't practice. After a while, you kind of tend to lose it. So I draw on these traditions. I write. Sometimes I do free writes in the morning, like a letter to myself, trying to practice self-love and self-care, because Yeah, it's hard. In these predominantly white spaces, these academic institutions, it can get difficult. So I have to maintain that kind of spiritual practice, meditation, all of it.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing the Ubuntu spirit into the space. The beginning of my dissertation has that same quote. I am because we are therefore I am.
Yes.
And it's part of the spirit that Kev and I work from in some of the work that we do consulting wise. So I was so happy to hear you bring that in and bring Harambe in. And one of the comments in our post had to do with just appreciating African dance and not necessarily understanding all of the meanings of things, and just learning so much from your description today. So Erica Bradley said, "Thank you for explaining these beautiful movements that I've always admired but never fully understood." And I think that can be said for so much of what you shared with us today. You brought a meaning for those of us that have African roots and are part of the Afrocentric tradition. There were learnings, and I'm sure for those who are not a part of the culture, I'm sure there were a tremendous amount of learnings tonight. So I really want to thank you, Jamilah. This was beautiful. Kev, did you have anything before?
Yeah, so Janice Walton, my mother, is watching from New York, and she said it was very interesting, and she loved your story. And I loved your story, but I just want to know about your energy. Now, I know your energy, like, you know, when we're in a social setting or just in life, but it shines through. And how, I just wonder how much of that is from your upbringing and being a Marcus Garveyite and just kind of, you know, just that setting, being in that setting.
My
and
energy.
Being from the D.
And being from the what?
From the D.
Hey, you know it. I think certainly Detroit is playing a pivotal role. You know, I don't come from wealth or privilege. You know, I come from an abundance of love, abundance of community. But, you know, financially, there is a lot of hardship, right? And there's a lot of difficulty. So I think I've learned this perseverance. People from Detroit are like the hardest working people I've ever met. There's a kind of work ethic that I've just learned by, you know, being bred in that city. So I think part of it is Detroit. I think part of it is just my genes, and I don't know, Kim Cole and hey family. I think that some of this energy is just hereditary, and then maybe some of it is me, and you know, trying to practice, you know, humility and grace and compassion for other people. I have such a heart for people, which I think has, you know, called me into the work of clinical psychology. So I think it's a combination of the city and hardship, as well as the love and the kind of African culture, and then kind of my own continued practice of that kind of humility and love.
Yeah, well, it's contagious. I can feel our energy through the screen.
Really.
Oh, sending all the love to everybody watching.
Absolutely. Look, everybody virtually has to give you a harambe as we thank you and transition. So again, thank you so much. And repeat telling is always welcome. So anytime you want to come back to the chair, it is certainly available to you. Everybody, awesome. Please join me in thanking Jamilah.
Yes, thank you. Harambe.
There you go.
Harambe.
Wonderful. So we said that you would be in for a treat tonight, and we promised two great tellers, and Jamilah kicked us off really beautifully. And our second teller is also somebody who has experienced telling story in different ways. When I first met Kerry Ann Fenton, she was doing the corporate America thing, and she is an accomplished corporate exec. She is also a small business owner and carrying on the legacy of her father's business. She's also a playwright and has produced her own play and part of her story and one of the ways in which she shares story. A mom of three wonderful young men, and I don't know what else she might want to share with you, but I'm excited to have our friend Kerry Ann Fenton join us this evening. Hi, Kerry Ann.
Hi, how are you? Good to be here.
Absolutely. I never know where you're going to be zooming in from. You're just all over the place. So,
Well, I have on my Jamaica shirt, but unfortunately, I'm in the cold Northeast. So,
right. Well, we're going to turn it over to you. We're happy to have you here, and please take it away.
Well, thank you. Thank you. To everyone that's out there, a pleasant good evening. When you get that call that says that come tell your story from a very special person, you come and you tell your story. So I just wanted to start out by giving honor and glory to God for all he's done in my life. I did write a play, as Karen mentioned, and 2 years ago this month, I performed that play with my family and close friends who participated in it. And it was a play that was telling the story of a very tragic incident in my life. It was the day that I lost my dad and the events surrounding losing my dad in a very tragic way. And I wrote the play and performed the play and kind of put it down. I did a radio interview with Michelle Turner, and I put the play down. And the other morning, interestingly enough, I was watching certain excerpts of the play, and that's when I got the call asking if I would want to share. So I figured I'd start out by giving a little bit of an update. Putting on the play was quite an experience, and I couldn't have done it without a wonderful director, Reverend Ina Anderson. I couldn't have done it without her, and I couldn't have done it without just a group of women and support system. But I also couldn't have done it without my pastor. And you'd be surprised to know that I actually think I didn't succeed in the message that I wanted to bring forth in the play. I wanted it to be about faith. And as much as I think people understood where I was coming from with the selections of song, what people mostly talk about is what a lovely story it was about my dad. And yes, it was a lovely story about my dad, but what I wanted to portray in that was, it was really just about how God saw me through one of the pivotal turning points in my life. And so tonight I come to you, and I'm going to try it again. I'm going to try to tell a story, a very personal story, because when I share, I don't know where else to come from. And I think in sharing, coming from that place of experience and telling my own story is what allows me to be honest and to be true. So Jamaica is wonderful, and I'm here in the States. My oldest, as Karen mentioned, of 3 boys. He is a senior, and he goes off for his final semester in a few days. And May is graduation, and so I'm here with this awful virus to make sure that he finishes up successfully, and that would be 1 down. And then I have 2 more to follow. The other day, so I'm going to transition into tonight. And the other day, I think everyone that's watching, maybe, but this Bridgerton love story and the English traditions really hit us over the holidays. And I watched it, not really knowing much about what it was about, but everyone was talking about it. So I said, wow, yeah, definitely, I want to watch and see what it's about. And it brought me back as a little girl, way too young. I was an only child at the time, and I lived with my dad, and I did a lot of reading. And I don't know where I got my hands on these books, but I got these books about the English romance novels, and I would sit there for hours and hours and hours. I think I averaged maybe a book every 2 or 3 days. And when I say young, I was under 13 for sure. So very impressionable age. And so from I was a little girl, I believed that you had a defined time frame to court a husband, a royal husband. Why not? And in that defined time frame, you found the person that you would love for the rest of your life, and he found you. And there were some that you, of course, didn't want to be with, but then you, of course, would find your mate, your soulmate, and you'd get married and you'd live happily ever after. And so I really felt like that was what adulthood would be like. And I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait to find that special person that, would be love at first sight almost. And, I was caught up in this fairy tale. And so I say that young people need to be very careful about, these stories that they read, because if you're reading it when you're too young, you tend to fall into that trap of believing that that's how life will be. And then my dad, he was such a romantic. And, I would watch him, as his only daughter, and we were together all the time. And I would watch how he just had this way about him that would make a woman just, melt, basically. And I would just look at him and I'd just say, wow, he just has a way with words, or the way he smiles, or, the little nuances and the things that he did. And so, I just believed in romance, and to this day, I'm a romantic. And so, in watching Bridgerton, and there's a part in it where, and I don't want to give away too much of the story, but I'm going to stop after this. There's a point in it where the mom and her oldest son get into it, and us Jamaicans and Jamaican mothers, and I'm sure in the Black community as well, there's a point when if your child is acting up, or they've gotten out of phase, you just want to just grab you and you're like, look, and you give them that death stare in their eyes, and you're like, look here, no, pick me. And everybody like, whoo, and you shape up, and then they let you go, and you're just supposed to go back to like, normal. Don't be upset. Don't cry. Don't complain. Nothing. You're just supposed to go back to whatever it was you were doing, but doing it right. So there's a point where I just wanted to be like, oh. Ugh. So with that in mind, I want to tell you about a love story. So at 16, I met love, and love was an older gentleman, much like you would find in these British novels, with young women who were just coming into their prime, and they would be courted by older men or more experienced men. So at 16, this love story that I had been dreaming about for years almost felt like it was coming through. And so I met love, and it was a lot, very soon, very fast, and very forbidden. Because that Jamaican mother of mine was like, oh no, 16 with an older gentleman was not going to work for her. And so love was, forbidden from I was young. But I'm persistent, I've been told, determined, are some of the words that people use. Stubborn, yeah, I've heard that one too. And so love and I, continued for years to see each other, and love saw me through a lot of challenges, because at 16 you're coming into your own. You now have a situation with your mom. You have just things, and some of what I was challenged with, love created. Because love brought a level of experience that I hadn't yet known, and so some of the things that love helped me to deal with and to grow into and to become was toxic, because he was the source of it as well. But that didn't matter, because love was love, and it was euphoric. It was euphoric. Anytime I was in his presence, or anytime we were together, I I was free. I was, I was loved. I was cherished, and all the emotions that you can think of. But again, love was forbidden. So I knew that, and he possibly knew as well, that there wasn't going to be that fairy tale wedding that we all dreamed about. And at some point in college, we decided to go our separate ways. And I went on to other relationships. And at certain points in life, Love and I would, touch base, see how things were going, and definitely if I was going through a difficult time, that's one of the times that I would reach out to Love, because Love knew me. He knew my past. He knew my secrets. He knew what to say. He knew how to make me laugh. He just knew, and we had gotten to know each other to such deep levels that while we could go off and live life, we kind of anchored ourselves back in tough times and in rough times. But sure enough, as love was forbidden when I was young, love became forbidden when I was married. And my husband didn't care for me having a friendship with another man that was, deeply rooted in a long ago love. And so, in order to make my marriage work, I had to give up on love. And I did. And love respected that, and love gave up on me. And for many years, we didn't communicate. We stayed away. We kept on with our lives. And after my dad died in July of 2018. And I was going through just a very difficult time with that. And I never thought to reach out to love until 2 months after my dad's death. My husband filed for divorce. And at that moment, it opened an opportunity to reach out to love, because now it was, I couldn't be forbidden anymore. I'm no longer, we're no longer, he's no longer in that place of power to say, you're forbidden to talk to love or to communicate with love. And so I reached out to love, and love was there. He was there to, again, see me through a very difficult time. And in doing the play, love, helped to also be behind the scenes and reading the script. And the day of the play, it was a lot of discussion as to whether love should attend the play or not. Love wanted to be there, but I didn't know if I wanted love to be there. But we agreed that love would come, and love played such an integral role at the play, in that love was again behind the scenes and manipulating the audio, manipulating the video, working hand in hand with the director. And at the end of the play, when I came out to greet everyone, love was not there. Love had left. And we later talked about why he didn't stay, and, and just the play and everything. And love said to me, he just couldn't understand how my husband could be in the room and see me on that stage, and just see just how, in his words, how magnificent I was, and still not want to be my husband. And at that moment, love was also in a marriage where his wife had, left, and they had lived separately for many, many years. And I turned to love and I said, I just can't understand why your wife would not come home to her husband and children for someone that cares so much. And what love and I wanted more than anything else was to be true to our spouses, and to be true to who we are, and to be true to our purpose. And so God is, has always been very, I shouldn't say always, since I was baptized in my 20s, I've leaned on God, and I've wrestled with God, and I've come closer with God, and love was not there. And in that timing, I sent love a lot of messages I would send in the mornings, I would send scripture. I would send songs, gospel songs that, really hit me one morning, and I would send those over to him. And then there was an email that I was getting on Fridays from a minister or a pastor that talked about marriage, and I would forward those to Love because, more than anything else, Love needed his marriage to work, and I knew mine was over. But I needed for Love to realize that we both had this commitment to our spouse that we had made, and Love ultimately, as much as he was there for me and as much as we relied on each other, Love needed to also focus on where he was put and what his life needed to be. And so I made a decision that Love probably would never have come to remove myself so that Love could flourish. And Love flourished. And it's such a wonderful thing to know that Love is flourishing. And with that, God, it's funny because, I go back to what I believed I needed in order to be complete. I believed I needed love. It's something I had believed as a little girl, that I needed love in order to be complete in this world. And what God did was God gave me the ability to see love and to realize that, love, yes, is there, but the only love that I need is the love of God. And through that experience, God took me full circle, and God was about to put me in the lion's den. And in the lion's den, you don't go with anyone. In the lion's den, you have to go alone. And you have to, it's like, when Jesus went into the wilderness, God will give you what you need to make it out. But you have to trust in God. You have to have faith. And I think God took me back to Love so that I would know that Love would be okay. And as I was going into that den, I would only have eyes for God. I would only have a heart for God, because God was going to strip me of everything. I close out the play with a song, Broken. Oh my goodness, it's escaping me now. Gracefully Broken. I closed out the play with that song, and I thought I was gracefully broken and I did the play. But, I didn't realize that God had more breaking to do. And when God breaks you down, he does it so that he can lift you up to such glory. And I tell you, if this was a month ago that I was asked to do this story, I don't know what I would have talked about. I don't know that I would be smiling. I don't know where I would have come, what place I would have come from. But God, on New Year's Eve, someone sent me a song, and it was like God just grabbed me and said, "Okay, my child, you are ready to go and be great," and just threw me. And with that, I just was like, I felt a peace that I haven't felt since my dad passed. I felt a peace that says, whatever life has, I have gone through the end, and there is nothing on this earth that is going to see me through. There's no one person that you need to hold on to and hold tight to, because if you have God and the Holy Spirit in your heart, you can go through. And so I just want to end. I don't know how much time I've used up, but I just want to end. And I don't even know if you're going to hear this, and I didn't seek permission before, but I'm going to try to just play just a snippet of the song that I was sent. And some of the lyrics, it says, it says, "I love you, Lord, for your mercy never fails me. All my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God." And it goes into this chorus. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so good. Yeah. Every breath that So with that, I will end my story. And the song, if you'd like to go and listen to it in its entirety, is "The Goodness of God" by the it's Tasha Cobb's version, but I think it's Mercy. I'm not sure, but I think we can find the right one. But if you search for Tasha Cobb's on YouTube, actually, and "Goodness of God," you should see it come up. So I thank you. I thank you, Karen and Kevin, for having me. Rev Kev for facilitating, and I hope my story it came from the heart for sure. And I hope you all received it in the love that I send it.
Thank you, Kerry, and thank you. Absolutely. I think about how you started, concerned that in your telling in the play, in the telling of your dad's story, that your message of faith didn't shine through as clearly. And I know in hearing this story from you that the message of faith came through very clearly for me. So I appreciate that, and thank you so much for sharing, and sharing literally a piece of your heart here. This was a really beautifully told story, and you know when I connected with you and you're like, well, I don't know what to talk about. I was like, I don't know. You've got a beautiful story of your dad, so I expected to hear more about the story of your dad, and this was a really sweet turn to see hear another part of your story. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
You open to a couple questions?
It's not coming from Kevin, is it?
Right, I don't know.
Yes, I'll open a question.
You always have the power to say, I'm not going to answer that.
No, when you come with your heart and you tell your story, you gotta, at least answer the questions that are out there. So yes, indeed.
So I love, I have always known how much Jamaica is a part of you, but I always love when you really get into something, your patois comes out, and we had a moment in there where you were sounding much like, I guess, your mom was probably sounding when you were 16 and meeting love and running around with love. I was just curious how much of the rest of the story does your mom know, or have you shared with your mom?
It's funny because I think it was Saturday morning that you and I connected, and yesterday morning, mom is always trying to get in the business, and I was recently in the area that love resides, and she wanted to know if we saw each other, and I said, no, mother, we did not. And it's funny because after the play, she didn't know, I didn't tell her love would be there. And, it was a love-hate relationship. And so she said to me, and mom doesn't know that I'm doing this right now either. So depending on where this question goes, I might send her the link or not. But she said to me, why didn't he say hi? And I was like, are we talking about the same person? And I'm like, Mom, I don't know. I don't know why he didn't say hi. But if you know the how a mother would be protective over her 16-year-old daughter, there were quite a few exchanges that would make him not quite so willing to say hi. To him, he thinks he's forever cursed from her memory, and so. Mom knows a lot. She knows a lot about the story, and we talked about it yesterday. And I think I've given her the understanding as well that, just because we have such a history doesn't mean that we have a future.
He was trying to get up out of there.
Probably.
Absolutely. So I don't know if Kev has been pulled into the Bridgerton series there. I too watched the whole thing over a couple days period. And it's I like the way you put into context sort of the stories that get fed around what love is going to look like, and the role of women in these relationships, and sort of thinking about that in that context. So where does that, if you think about that and your faith journey, where does that leave you now in thinking about love, not the person, but love in your life?
So what my life experiences have taught me is I need to snap out of that fairy tale. I need to be dragged out of it and say, look here, no pick me. That's not how love go. Right. and wait on the Lord, wait on the Lord. I will not say whether there's love in my future or not, because I don't know. But, I want to live in God's purpose, and that is in telling of the goodness of God. And he's done so much in my life. And so if in doing that, love comes out of it, then great. If not, God is sufficient.
Yeah. Thank you. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cav, anything?
Yeah, I asked you to ask her, but you told me I had to ask her. So I need some really important information. And how old is your middle son?
He is going to be 13 next month, so 12.
This has nothing to do with the story. I'm
right.
hearing you, Kerry Ann.
It's all right. Let him go, coach.
Yeah, you can recruit after we log off.
There's no recruiting, please. That's why I get in trouble. No, but that was I was expecting more of the story about your dad, because I greatly enjoyed the play itself. And so when you started going here, I said, this got very interesting. But it's just one of those things where, are you and Love still friends? And is it one of those things where if you see each other or hear each other 10 years from now, you pick right back up?
So a couple things. So what makes this story still so much connected to my dad is the example that my dad set for me in terms of how he treated women, and how I could see I wanted to feel that same love that I could see him bringing out in other people. And so that also framed my perception of what love was. It was typically, I'll leave it there. Now, in terms of Love and I and whether or not we're friends. So I don't think Love and I can be friends. And here's why. While I was married, Love and I were friends. And it was a very uncomfortable situation for my husband, for my spouse. And while I didn't appreciate being told that I could no longer have this friend, because I felt it was a lack of trust, you have to understand, when you do have such a friendship with another male and you're in a marriage, that how that could be perceived. And I had to say, well, how would I feel if I was, if he had that type of friendship with another female? And so with that, I honored and respected his wishes. And so love is still married. And how does his wife, I don't know, she knows of me, but I don't know how much of me she knows. But I just don't feel well being in that role of a friend, knowing that my spouse wasn't okay with it. And I also don't think love would be willing to let go of the friendship by putting himself in his wife's viewpoint. And so with him not appreciating how that could be felt by the other person, I have chosen to let go and let love go, so that love can be that person. And one thing I want to share, as far as when you're with someone, that's who your go-to should be. That's who you should go to when you have something to share, when you need help, when you're down and out. That's who you should go to. And if you have someone else that also plays that role, that's a conflict. So who do you go to when you need, when you need to laugh? And if you're thinking to go to your friend as opposed to your spouse, and that is your red flag right there. And so I don't want love to be in that position. Now, 10 years from now, I think love and I have that foundation that we can always pick up where we left off in terms of our friendship. I think a long time ago, we knew that a future with us as husband and wife or together was never going to go further. But in terms of that friendship that we have, I mean, we know so much about each other that, 10 years from now, pick up the phone and, how's life? How things, how what's changed? How are the kids? I don't, that could happen. But, I think for love and for his path and his marriage and his life, that he needs to focus there.
All right. Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kerry. And there's so much love in our chat as well. When you get a chance to read through it, you'll see. I
don't see the chat.
I'll share it with you.
Okay.
Such appreciation for your sharing and such a beautiful story, and co-signing on, avoid those emotional affair kinds of traps. So thank you so much. So appreciate your sharing. If you ever want to come back again, the seat is always open. And we so appreciate you. So,
all right, well, I'll give you a hint to when Michelle Turner asked me if I was going to do a sequel to the play, and I told her it would be called The Gold Digger. And so before we get to The Gold Digger, girl,
you want to hear it here?
I had to let love go on about his business.
Okay. Well, we look forward. Look, everybody's intrigued now to hear more about the Gold Digger. So when you're ready, go on back. So that wraps up our time for this month, though, everybody. This is what we do at Storytellers. We're here every month with two amazing storytellers sharing time with us and answering questions along the way. If you have an interest in sitting in the seat and being a teller, we do have some openings and we'd love to have you. It's as simple as just reaching out to us. You can drop it in the chat right now. You can hit us up on Facebook or email us at storytellersnewhaven@gmail.com. And we look forward to seeing you again next month. Any final words, Kev?
Yeah, no. So just a reminder, next month, February 8th, we're right back here. And somebody may be bragging about their team winning the Super Bowl that night. I know it won't be us. Hopefully it'll be the Buffalo Bills, right?
Let's hope. Thank you for that shout out.
All right. But yeah, that's it. I mean, but the main thing is like, there's a lot going on in the world. Take care of yourself mentally, take care of yourself physically. It's okay not to be okay. And, lean on your family and friends and just take care of yourselves. And be safe out there. And again, thank you for joining, and thank you for engaging on Facebook, liking the Facebook page and the messages and everything. So we greatly appreciate you.
All right. I think with that, we're all set. Thank you, Rev Kev. You can take us on out. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
And so you close enough to